Good morning. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Morning Matchups. I'm your boy, Sam Khorramian, the Night Zero. Today we're going to cover a topic we've talked about before, which is the best, the ultimate, the most predictable blueprint for success. I probably have about 7, 8, maybe 10 points that we'll go through. Before we dive in, I think it's important to clarify what the best blueprint of success means. To me, I've said this many times before, success leaves a lot of clues. And the most successful people I know are the ones that have followed a proven path that have helped other people get to where they want to be. And in this business, as in any business, we have the option of trying to figure out how to do things on our own and trying to do things our way. Or you can take really one of the only shortcuts to success, which is following the blueprint and the steps and the systems that other people have done to become successful. So with that said, let's dive in. The first thing I wrote down is, number one, we have to connect the dots between achieving the goals that we've set, the schedule that we keep, the prospecting that we do, and the discipline that we exercise daily. On the surface, that seems like an of course, but the reality is that there's a lot of noise and a lot of things that will get in the way of you, one, connecting the dots between the goals that you've set and the schedule that you keep. Because oftentimes, as we start to get busy, we start to get complacent and we'll let any distraction be good enough to keep us on schedule. We have to remember that in order to have continued growth, we have to be able to push past the complacency that comes as you start to get a little bit busier. We see it all the time where, someone will go from having no business to having 3 or 4 deals in escrow. And then all of a sudden they feel too busy and they stop doing what they did in the first place to get the deals into escrow. So we have to remember that keeping our schedule, staying on top of our prospecting, and keeping that discipline in place is critical to your ability to have continued long-term success and not have the ups and downs a lot of people experience in the business. Number 2, we have to recognize that the more prospecting you do, the better you will be, regardless of your market and the conditions of it. So, already over the past week, I've gotten messages from people concerned about, all the noise out there with the virus and all that stuff. And this morning I had a call with my coach, Mike Ferry. Both of us agreed that the only thing that we can do, should do, and that matters is staying on the phone. You might say less people are going to be out, which means more people are going to be home. And even in the big financial crash of 2008, 2009, there was still millions and millions and millions of transactions that happened. And obviously we're in a completely different place, but my point is staying on top of your prospecting, communicating with people, not taking your foot off the gas is one of the most important parts of winning in any market, especially if we're headed into a market, which it seems like we may be. And I don't want that to scare you. Instead, I would look at it as an opportunity to put your head down and be focused on communicating with people, doing your prospecting, your outreach, and staying on top of your game. Number 3, easy to say, tough to do. On the days that don't go well, we have to try our hardest to practice having blind faith. I know that regardless of what's going on today with the virus, we always have the inner conversation, the inner dialogue that can oftentimes screw with our ability to stay on top of our game. Coming from the perspective that regardless of where you're at, where the business is at, where the market is at, if you practice blind faith behind taking actions on the things that you know work, such as communicating, keeping your schedule, keeping up with your marketing, the transactions don't really go anywhere. Yes, they might change and timelines might be different, but practicing blind faith and doing what's right instead of what's easy is the most critical part of staying in motion in any part of the business, any part of the market, and not allowing those conditions that we may or may not experience to have an effect on the actions that you take. So blind faith is not just the idea of sitting and being positive and focusing on the law of attraction. It's having blind faith in the fact that if you continue to do what is important and you continue to stay on top of the game, that if markets slow down What happens alongside that is the amount of people that are staying productive dramatically drops, lower than the amount of volume drops. So you have to think, if we go into a slowage of sales, which we're not seeing, but let's assume that that does happen for a moment, the amount of people that are going to stop performing is going to drop at a much greater rate, which actually might mean that your chances of success are even greater if you focus on doing what's important. You know, some of my most successful friends in the business made more money in the tough times than they do right now in the good times. Right now, it might be simpler and more volume, but the people that stay focused on what's important and don't let the distractions get them from getting off track are the people that are going to really win bigger in tough markets and then continue to win strongly in good markets like we've been experiencing. Number 4, we have to understand that your scripts have to be conversational. If you're not using a script right now, that means you're to a degree shooting from the hip, which in itself, in my opinion, is a challenge and an issue. But most people won't jump on the bandwagon, I don't know if that's the right word, but buy into the idea of using scripts because they don't want to sound robotic, they don't want to sound salesy, insert any other excuse or reason here, where the reality is the most successful people know what they're going to say in every scenario. They know how to handle every objection that they get. And at some point, before they internalized it, they sounded robotic, they sounded salesy, they sounded like they were trying to be something that they're not. But just like anything else in life, over the course of time, if you stick to the game and you practice and do what you're supposed to do, over that period of time, it will be more conversational, you'll sound less robotic, and you'll be more of a communicator as opposed to what you're concerned about possibly being, which is sounding salesy. What I know for sure is one of the biggest objections I get when I suggest people get on their scripts and learn their dialogues is the concern is people don't want to sound salesy. When in reality, the people that know their scripts, know what to say, have internalized the dialogue, are the ones that can deliver a conversation and have a dialogue with the consumer that puts the consumer first, makes them feel comfortable and confident, handles their objections, their concerns, their nerves, and makes them sound anything but salesy. And for those of us that are resisting the idea of using scripts, dialogues, objection handlers that have been proven to work, that means that you're guessing, you're hoping, you're praying, and you're shooting from the hip. My point of all of that is I would challenge you to be real with the fact that if you're not doing the scripts, learning them and internalizing them because you don't want to sound salesy, you're actually the one that sounds like the used car salesman, because you start to speak through your commission breath, you start to speak through desperation, you start to tell people things as opposed to ask them questions. So if you avoid using scripts because you don't want to be salesy, I believe the reality is that you're actually being what you don't want to be by not focusing on learning your scripts and your dialogues. Number 5, to me, this is one of the most critical parts of continued success. Doesn't matter if I'm going from 0 deals and trying to get to 10, or if I'm going from 50 and trying to get to 100, or whatever the stretch is. We have to work every day just a little bit to strengthen your mindset and learn to get over shit. So one of the best things that I did to help my mindset years ago is throughout the course of the day, I would have 4 15-minute mindset breaks. And I would have one in the morning, I would have one before lunch, a little bit after, around 2 o'clock, and then towards the end of the day. And in those 15 minutes, I would pop open YouTube and just listen to a motivational video. I would read a book. I would look at my notes, my scripts. I would review my goals. I would do some visualizing. I would do things that put my mind in the right place to essentially brainwash me to do the things I didn't want to do. We've all experienced that when you show up to work and your attitude or your mind is broken, or you're feeling down or stressed or whatever it may be, you almost want to do anything besides what you're supposed to do. And the easiest way to reverse that is by focusing on putting good things in your head to bring back the mojo, quiet the noise in the conversations you're having with yourself, and put you into a position to do what you're supposed to do and stay focused on growing, communicating, and acting in your business. Number 6, we have to learn the habits of top producing agents. Letter A under the 4 habits is 1, top producers are top prospectors. It's impossible to have someone that does a lot of business, but at the same time have that same person not be prospecting and talking to a lot of people. Letter B, aggressive and consistent lead follow-up. We've heard this many times before. As salespeople, we lose more money in the lead follow-up part of the business than anywhere else. Why that happens is because of the inner dialogue, because you feel like you don't want to bug people. You're worried that if you follow up too much, you might lose somebody. All of these things are just your drunk monkey telling you BS stories, where if you took the time and you studied or met and interviewed the most successful people in your market, you're always going to find that those people are very aggressive and consistent with their lead follow-up. You know, something that Mike always says is your leads that you need to follow up with have asked you at some degree to follow up with them. So be respectful of that and do what you said you're going to do, as opposed to convincing yourself and tricking yourself into believing that they're going to call you or reach out to you when they're ready. The reality is they never do. And the few times that they do, you should just consider yourself lucky. What happens in the lead follow-up business is we have to be real with the fact that the same lead that you have, on average, about 5 other realtors have. So what you've done by taking your prospect to a lead is you've started to loosen the jar. And then when you drop the lead follow-up and another agent pops in, they get to open the jar that you've spent time loosening for them, right? It is the backbone of long-term progression in any sales organization. It's not just prospecting, but it's taking your leads and converting them into contracts and appointments and not allowing yourself to get off track with that. Letter C, a strong commitment to pre-qualifying your buyers and your sellers. Pre-qualifying not only helps loosen the jar a little bit more, it's done correctly, it's going to give you insight as to the potential objections you're going to receive. It's going to give you insight as to the client's motivation. It's going to help you stand out from the other agents they may be chatting with. And as importantly as that, it'll let you know if you're talking to someone that has a condition that would keep them from being able to buy or sell real estate. I think what's more depressing than getting rid of an appointment because they're not pre-qualified, I think what's more depressing than that is going on an appointment, spending time, energy, bandwidth on someone just to find out that regardless of how good you are, they still can't make a decision to buy or sell real estate. I would much rather kill it up front so I don't spend time, energy, bandwidth on a dead opportunity and essentially walking out of the appointment with my tail between my legs. You're in a lot more control when you decide to pre-qualify so that you, 1, get all the advantages, and 2, in the rare scenarios that someone is not qualified, ready, or has a challenge that is more of a condition, you choose not to participate in that conversation. Letter D is being committed to continuing to improve a strong presentation. We have to remember that when you're working with buyers and sellers, when you're with them, that's showtime. And unless you are practicing how to present your value add, your process, what you're going to do to help them get the price they want, the terms they want, and the time that they want, someone else is going to show up and do a better job. We have to remember that our prospects, our clients, already believe that we know what to do because we have a license. They're not looking for someone that knows what to do. They're looking for someone that makes them believe that they're the person for their job. And that is directly connected to your communication and your presentation. You know, your goal in every presentation should be, after you're done at your listing or working with your buyers, they stand up and give you a round of applause. Now, we know that they're not actually going to do that. But if you're coming into it trying to put on such a strong show and a presentation for them, and your mindset is one that I'm going to get these people to start singing songs about me when this is done, That's a very big difference than just going in and hoping and praying or presenting some comps and hoping that you're the person that gets the appointment or the contract. Number 7, we have to learn to delegate every non-income producing activity. To me, I think one of the best practices that we can do is take inventory of a few days of our work, hour by hour, and keep a journal of what you're doing every single hour for that hour for a few days. And then afterwards, go back and look at it and ask yourself, where did you spend time on something that could have been delegated or outsourced for less than you're trying to make per hour? What I mean by that is if you're working full-time to make $1 million a year, you need to make $524 an hour. So if you want to make $500,000, you need to make $260 an hour. Whatever your number is. And if you're doing things that are making you less than $50, $80, $100, $200, $500 an hour, those are things you should consider delegating and handing off to someone else. If you don't have an assistant, consider looking at things like Fiverr, TaskRabbit, Upwork, and different solutions that let you outsource individual tasks to people that are qualified to do them for you. Number 8, every day when complacency pops up, we have to learn to fight it. And the easiest way to do that is by having a strong commitment to something that forces you to go to work. If you draw the line in the sand and make non-negotiable commitments that force you to go to work, it makes it a lot harder for you to be complacent and not take action around the things that you know you need to take action around. I remember, I've shared this story with you guys before. When I first got into coaching years ago, I was probably 19-ish years old. For the first year of being in coaching, I just lied to my coach about everything. I didn't do anything that I said I was going to do, and I was making no progress. And one day he asked me, he's like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you in the business? And my answer was simple. I was like, well, I want a Mercedes AMG. Like, that's why I'm doing this. I want that car. At the time I was pretending to be in college. For me, it was I didn't have family, and I just wanted the nice car. So he said, okay, well, go buy it today and watch how that forces you to go to work. So I went to Mercedes, and I didn't get approved for it, but I walked across the street to Lexus and I got approved for a GS. And that at the time was the biggest payment I ever had. It scared the shit out of me, but it forced me to stay in motion and avoid distractions, fight complacency, and I always figured out how to pay that bill. The reality is that most of us, I think it's 90 or 95% of people, do enough just to live right above their means. So if you want to have more and live a better life, maybe you consider raising your means, either financially or by some sort of level of commitment that forces you to go to work when you don't feel like going to work. Number 9, we have to be real with the fact that the most successful people in the business spend 75% of their time working on getting listings and 25% of their time getting rid of them. The most predictable way to scale a real estate sales business is by focusing on listings. And if you have buyers that are taking up too much of your time, at the same time you know that you can predictably grow your listing business, you might consider handing those buyers off to someone else in your company or on a team or whatever it may be. You're going to spend a lot more time working with buyers than you are sellers. In addition to that, sellers have a lot more residual value that come from signs, referrals, etc., than just buyers. Number 10, you have to be real with the fact that the economy and the market do not control your production. The economy and the market do not control your production. People will need to sell in all markets. And when it gets shitty, the bad people leave the business, which means that there's room for the rest of us to continue to grow ours. Number 11, if you are in coaching, do 100% of what your coach says, with a target of actually executing on 70% of it. Be committed to doing 100%, but be real with the fact that if all you did was 70% of it, you're gonna win the damn game. I wrote down underneath that, if you're not in coaching, either consider joining a coaching program, or find someone that you believe in, consume their content that's free online and everywhere, and find accountability partners to help you be accountable to the content that you know has a predictable chance of helping you grow your business. Next thing I wrote down is write a blueprint for yourself directly connected to the goals that you've set. What I mean by that is if the goal is to do X, let's say 25 deals, work backwards from there and build a plan based off of your history in the business. And if you have no history in the business, build a plan on best practices of other people in the business. Build a blueprint for week by week, month by month. Build it into your schedule and don't allow yourself to vary away from what the schedule and the blueprint say. You know, I did a post in Real Closers the other day, and I asked, what is your average contact to appointment ratio when calling expireds? And I saw as low as 7 to 1, and I think the highest I saw was like 100 or right around 100 to 1. Let's just assume that you're the 100 to 1 and you want to sell 20 houses this year. That means you need to make 100 times 20, which would be 2,000 contacts in order to take 20 listings.
But in the meantime, you'll get better at your presentation.
Correct. And that's assuming that you only stay at 100 to 1. I mean, the guy that said he was 7 to 1, at some point was not 7 to 1. He might have been 80 to 1, 100 to 1, 50 to 1. No one starts at 7 to 1. No one starts at 12 to 1. Let's assume that everyone starts around 100 or 150. Call it 200 to 1, which means you need to make 4,000 contacts. There's a lot of worse things to do in this world to make $200,000 or $240,000, 24 times 10K commission, than to have to make 4,000 contacts in the 220 days that you work. But if you build a blueprint backwards from where you want to be, knowing those stats, build it into your schedule, do your lead follow-up, it becomes a lot easier for you to get to where you need to get. Last point I have to get comfortable with embracing repetitious involvement and boredom. Have to get comfortable embracing repetitious involvement and boredom. I wrote down underneath that this is the key to everything we do in life. Repetitious involvement and boredom. Prospecting is about as boring as it gets, especially when you're not good at it. Practicing, role-playing, all of these things are boring, but your repetitious involvement behind the boring things in the business puts you in the position that you're one of the few people that's doing what you're supposed to do, because everyone else is going to fight tooth and nail to avoid the repetitious involvement around things that are boring. All right, that's all I got for you today. Thanks for tuning in. Wash your hands, stay safe, and turn off the news. See you later.